I'm Emily Chang, and this is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from the week in tech. Coming up, Apple has reportedly hit a production snag on the iPhone 10, while Amazon rolled out revamped versions of the Echo. We'll see how the two tech giants currently stack up on hardware. Plus, Ellen Pao discusses why she wrote her new book, Reset, and what changes she would propose to combat online harassment. And GoPro unveils its most powerful camera yet. Could this be the key to the company's turnaround? We'll hear from CEO Nick Woodman. But first, to our lead. Apple is already facing production delays to its top-of-the-line iPhone 10. The delays come due to problems with the 3D sensor manufacturing process. Reports saying makers of the components used in facial recognition are struggling to reach adequate production levels. Bloomberg's Alex Webb, who covers Apple, gave us all the details.
Well, we know from the reports yesterday initially from Nikkei there were some problems with the 3D sensors, and that's causing some delays to the production process. Then subsequently the Wall Street Journal, kudos to them, they dug into it a little bit more, and it's the sensor which projects the infrared dots on your face, which then helps map your face for the 3D sensor facial recognition system that Apple has. We don't quite know the extent to which that will affect how many phones are on the shelves come November the 3rd, though? Well,
that was my next question is, to what extent do we know how all of these things that we're learning about are actually going to impact supply?
So, going back to the start of September when Apple unveiled these two phones, they had the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10. And for the first time ever, as far as I know, in terms of iPhone releases, they staggered the release. So the iPhone 8 is already on shelves. You can go out and buy one, assuming they have supply. You can go out and buy one right now. There's a 6-week window, though, until the iPhone 10 becomes available, because we knew going into this cycle there were some problems with the OLED screens. Now, Apple said that those delays were taken into account when they made their projections for the current quarter, the one which ends on the 30th. But we don't know to what extent these 3D sensor delays were taken into account when they said the release date will be November the 3rd. If it was, then investors don't have anything to worry about, on this front at least. If they did, then it might be that they're in short supply come that day, and they will not be able to meet demand, and that is something which might be a cause for concern.
Could this be, or give us some answer as to why the release was staggered, with the iPhone 8 out last week and the iPhone 10 not out till November?
Yes, it could be one of the factors. OLED is, of course, the other one. There are only a handful of factories in the world making these organic light-emitting diode displays, which give it this sharper, wider display for the iPhone 10. But we did know there had been some problems with the, getting these 3D sensor systems working. We weren't quite aware of the extent of the issue. It's really going to. We're obviously doing our own reporting, digging into it, seeing exactly what the case is. The problem seems to be in what they call the module makers. You have all these different components which you piece together to make the 3D sensor package itself, which then goes into the phone. It's there that the sticking point seems to be. The people delivering those components, they are doing okay, but it's the module assemblers, and that's, as far as we know, LG Innotek in South Korea, and Sharp, the Japanese company, which is owned by Foxconn. Those seem to be the places where they've got issues.
It's interesting, given that Tim Cook was Apple's COO for many years. He was the supply chain genius, and obviously, probably knows more about the supply chain than anyone at Apple. That at this point, they've been working on this phone for months, if not years. Why wouldn't they be able to stockpile some of these components for the release?
I think it possibly speaks to the fact that people have been worrying for a while about the extent to which you're really able to deliver blockbuster technological advances in smartphones anymore. So Apple has really been trying to push the envelope, get the latest technology available for their phones. The difference is, of course, the iPhone as a single model is the best-selling smartphone in the world. Samsung sells more smartphones, but there are, of course, a bunch of different models. Because it's the best-selling smartphone in the world, and they're trying to do this really cutting-edge technology, it's maybe a lot of these companies are not yet at the stage where they can deliver all the components necessary. On some of the conference calls for these companies over the past couple of months, they had a big capital expenditure as they tried to ramp up production and meet Apple's demands. Clearly, some of that hasn't been as successful as anticipated. It's
interesting, all of this coming at the same time that the iPhone 8 is out, and there are, people who are complaining about certain features, some things not working. What do you make of that? Like, how much could it impact sales?
Well, we always see a little bit of that. There's always this launch of any product, there are some teething problems. Usually most of it is solvable with a software patch. We had the watch last week having some LTE connectivity issues for some of the reviewers. There have been complaints about crackling audio. I literally just got my iPhone 8, so we'll have to see whether that's the case. But often, and Apple has said in terms of this problem with the crackling audio, that they will be able to remedy it with a software fix. So I wouldn't worry too much about those things as an investor. At any rate, it's the supply issue which is a far greater consideration and concern.
Meantime, Amazon seems to have found its hardware calling in the Amazon Echo. The tech giant held an event in Seattle to unveil a number of new products, including an improved Alexa-powered smart home hub, a smaller Echo speaker, and a version of its compact Echo with a screen called Spot. The product revamp shows that the tech giant will not back down to the likes of Apple or Google. Bloomberg Tech's Mark Gurman, who attended the event and joined me from Seattle, gave us the scoop.
This is Amazon stepping up to the plate here and heralding itself as a major consumer technology player. No longer is it just Apple and Google and other players who can hold the splashy event to announce a bunch of new tech products in succession. Amazon is saying they're here now too, and they really stepped up their smart home game, introducing several new Echo speakers as well as a new set-top box product for the home.
So, Mark, you review all of these products. How does this stack up to what Google has with Google Home and what Apple is planning to unveil in December with the HomePod?
So Google has their home speaker. It's the center of their smart home world. Apple has their single HomePod speaker coming out in December, and that's also going to become the center hub of their smart home world. And then around those products, they have other devices. Apple has the Apple TV, the iPhone, the iPad, some iPods, and their services. Google has the Pixel phones and their Chromecast and TV products and their operating system, Android. But what Amazon is saying is, we're going to make the smart home our entire category. We're going to take over every different part of the home. So not only do they have a smaller $100 mid-tier speaker, but they have a new high-end speaker that allows you to connect your lights and other smart home appliances to your network, and a new Fire TV product, as well as a new Echo Spot, which I think, at least for me, really stole the show. It's this $130 little half-circle device with about a 2.5-inch screen. It's a little bigger than like an Apple Watch screen. You can make video calls from it. You can watch video, listen to music, read lyrics, get contacts, learn about your day, your calendar, your weather. So what you see is Amazon coming out with smart home devices and speakers for all parts of your life. And you also alluded to the BMW partnership. We're seeing another car maker getting Alexa. So basically, Amazon is trying to stick Alexa wherever you are.
Do you think we'll see more partnerships in the future with other car makers, for example?
So this is the third one. They announced partnerships with Volkswagen as well as Ford at the beginning of the year. I haven't seen many new models with those Alexa functions come out as of yet. BMW was on stage at the event today at the Seattle office. You can see behind me. And they talked about how some of their new cars, a couple of models, one sedan, one SUV, will come out in the middle of the year with Alexa. It's interesting. Will someone buy a new car just because it has Alexa support in it? I don't think that's going to drive any sales or new purchase intent for the consumer on the car side. But it certainly is a big win for Amazon, being able to allow someone to potentially be in their car driving home. Their spouse calls them and say, hey, we're out of cat litter for the cat, or out of something. They can just say, Alexa, whatever, and that will let them buy it through their car. So it's a deep tie, a big win for Amazon there.
In using Amazon Alexa, it's certainly got the cool factor. There are some cool things that you can do, but Alexa still gets confused sometimes. It seems that the voice recognition aspect of it still has a long way to go. Did Amazon address any of that today?
Well, we saw a lot of new functionality on the developer side. So they introduced a lot of first-party products, this new hardware. But in terms of functionality, they're relying a lot on third parties. So there's new deep integrations with other devices like lights and thermostats and TV sets, what you would have in your home. New ways to integrate with other parts of your life. There's these new Echo buttons, which sort of lets you make games and play games by clicking different buttons that connect to your home speaker via Alexa. There is ways to go in this voice space. There is lots of AI stuff that they're working on. There's actually a presentation going on now that I'm missing that for this, but it's worth it. Totally worth talking to you anytime, Emily.
Well, Ford and Lyft are teaming up to develop self-driving cars. The automaker and the ride-hailing service have announced they will share data to develop the systems and technology needed to design affordable driverless automobiles and eventually get them onto Lyft's network. This move comes as Ford's rival GM bought a 9% stake in Lyft in January of last year for $500 million. And those two companies are still considering other options to expand ride-sharing offerings. Coming up, Ellen Pao opens up about her very public fight against sexism in Silicon Valley. We'll hear about life after the court case and the progress or lack thereof for women in tech. This is Bloomberg. Dyson, best known as a manufacturer of vacuum cleaners, will build an electric car by 2020. Founder James Dyson said Tuesday that the company is investing over $1.3 billion to develop the car, plus the same amount to create solid-state batteries to power it. Dyson said his electric car would be, quote, radically different than those being designed by other car makers, including Tesla. Well, Ellen Pao continues to make headlines. It's been 5 years since her trial against Kleiner Perkins became one of the most prominent cases of its kind in Silicon Valley. While she may have lost the suit, she helped kickstart the conversation of gender equality. Now, Pao has written a book about her experiences called Reset, My Fight for Inclusion and Lasting Change. I spoke with Pao and asked, what is her goal in rehashing all these details now? Take a listen.
A big part of it was just having so many women and men come up to me and tell me how much my story had inspired them and how much it gave them comfort in the experiences that they had, how they had connected with it. And I wanted to give them all the facts and give them the whole story and to see if I could help other people through the writing of this book. And over time also to kind of give this kind of inspiring ending to what was a pretty terrible experience, so that you can get through all of this and continue and have a career and move forward and also try to change tech and the business world.
You wrote in an op-ed in the New York Times that although a lot hasn't changed, the one thing that has is that people now acknowledge the problem of sexism in the industry. Do you think if you filed your suit today that the outcome would be different?
I don't know that we would be here if I hadn't filed suit, so it's hard to say, right? So we've changed the conversation. No longer are women forced to defend themselves. It's a much easier experience for people to say, I've been harassed or I've been discriminated against. People believe it. But I don't know, if it hadn't been for all these women who have come after me to share their stories, if we would be where we are today. But I do think somebody suing now has a much better shot.
We've seen so many allegations, a rash of, sexual harassment stories in venture capital, at Uber, SoFi. Has any of this surprised you, or are you just not surprised at all?
I think most people who are familiar with the highest levels of tech and venture capital have heard the stories. I think what's been surprising has been that so many people have now come forward to talk about them. I think it started with a bunch of women who have come forward in the last few years, and then with Susan Fowler coming out with such a detailed and specific blog post, and her being accepted and not being taken down. It's opened the door for more people to come forward and to change the conversation.
Susan Fowler catalyzed, entire investigation into Uber's culture. Travis Kalanick has resigned. What do you think went so wrong at Uber? How did it get to that point?
I think it's early on. I don't know the details, but I think what happens in companies is that you get this culture and you want to be hard driving and you want to push and you want to break all the rules, and that ends up not being limited to the business side. It ends up going into the personal side. It ends up going into your interactions with employees and your peers and the people who report to you, and you don't think the rules apply, so you just do whatever you want, and that ends up breaking down into illegal areas.
What do you think, what responsibility do VCs have, the VCs who invested in Uber have for, I don't know what it is, letting the bros or bro culture run wild?
I think they have a huge responsibility, and I think the investors in the VC funds also have a responsibility for letting the venture capitalists run wild. But the problem is you've got the fox guarding the hen house. So you've got people who are not, who don't have clean hands, who are trying to manage people and tell them, hey, you're not supposed to do these things when they're doing them themselves. So, as the board member, you have a huge responsibility to the employees of the company, to the other shareholders, to make sure that the company is, a company that is operating within the bounds of the law and is building a culture that's going to help it be successful and that is diverse and inclusive, because we know that generates better financial results, better products.
You go into incredibly fine detail about the boys club environment that you experienced at Kleiner Perkins, and not just sexist jokes, but racist jokes as well. If the culture is that broken, can it be fixed?
I don't know if the bigger companies and the older funds can actually be fixed, but I know in working through Project Include and through the KPOR capital teams that there are a lot of CEOs, there are a lot of founders who are really committed to diversity and inclusion, and they want to build companies that include everyone, that are, tied to the community, that are tied to their customer, and that are going to build the best products. So I have a lot of hope, because I think the next generation of companies that are successful will have this commitment to diversity and inclusion and will be inclusive across all of their activities. I don't know about these funds that have been around for a while and talk about lowering the bar, as you've heard, and
right.
Finding that next white male nerd. I mean, it's just how do you change that attitude?
That said, I mean, you're referencing a comment that Mike Moritz of Sequoia made to me a couple of years ago. Venture capital firms like Sequoia, like Benchmark, they have one woman partner now. Andreessen Horowitz, still no women partners. Do you think that these male-dominated firms, though, are they actually going to be surpassed if they still have, quote, the best returns and the best reputation?
I know a lot of women and people of color who will not go meet with them because they don't think they'll be treated fairly. And if you look at the language, I'm lowering the bar to bring in people from different groups, they don't think that women or other groups are actually equal to the men that they typically invest in. So, how do you go and join, how do you let somebody like that invest in you and expect to get the same outcome as the other people that they're investing in, or as you would get with a different investor who actually believes that you are capable and as likely to succeed as other people?
That was Ellen Pao, author of Reset and Kapoor Capital partner. We'll have more from our conversation with Ellen later in the show. Coming up, Facebook is making a larger push to attract advertisers as it broadens its media content. This while President Trump calls out the company for fake news. We'll break down this new media landscape. Plus, China issues a new warning for WhatsApp. We'll discuss the status of the messaging service and what it means for Facebook's inroads in the country. This is Bloomberg. Facebook says it had success fighting fake news in the recent German federal election. The company says it launched a major effort in the country to combat fake news, deploying new methods it's developed in the months since President Trump was elected in the United States. While the right-wing Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, made historic gains in the election, Richard Allen, Facebook's vice president of public policy in Europe, said in a blog post that, quote, "These actions did not eliminate misinformation entirely in this election, but they did make it harder to spread and less likely to appear in people's news feeds. Studies concluded that the level of false news was low." Sticking with Facebook, President Trump is taking aim at the social network, tweeting, "Facebook was always anti-Trump. The networks were always anti-Trump, hence fake news. New York Times and Washington Post were anti-Trump. Collusion?" The tweet comes after Facebook revealed it will turn over the 3,000 political ads it says were bought with Russian money in last year's presidential campaign. So, how will it all affect Facebook's push to attract advertisers as it broadens its content offerings? Ben Lair, CEO of Group 9, and Jerry Smith, who covers media for Bloomberg, joined us to weigh in.
Facebook is really making an aggressive push to try and take away advertising dollars from TV networks. They just launched Facebook Watch, and there's a lot of publishers, online publishers that are producing content for that. That's really where there's this big push here. There's a $70 billion market for television advertising, and Facebook wants a piece of it, Google wants a piece of it, and the TV networks, right now they have the lion's share of that, but there is some shift going to digital.
Are they concerned about the fake news? Are they concerned about this Russia issue? Advertisers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that advertisers are extremely conservative. They're very concerned about their brand appearing next to content that's questionable. We saw YouTube have a real problem with that earlier this year. So yeah, I mean, I think advertisers are very concerned about their content showing up alongside fake news as well.
Ben, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that Facebook is successful in sort of shaking some of that money out of television. That's sort of the model that we're building at Group 9 is to create content for these platforms, sort of in advance of the money showing up, but knowing that consumer attention is shifted there. And ad dollars always lag consumers in sort of any big shift. And so I think over the next few years, you'll see money start to move more and more from TV into where people are spending time, which is in mobile and mobile video specifically.
Facebook and Google are really gobbling up the digital ad pie. I mean, how much is left over for companies like you?
Yeah, so if you look at how TV has traditionally been bought, advertisers are buying directly from the cable networks, yet in digital, the sort of ecosystem is set up so that you're buying from the platforms rather than from the media brands. That's problematic as a media brand building on these platforms, but I think a shift is happening now, and it's going to take a long time where as Facebook and Google specifically, but Snapchat and Twitter as well, are looking at that $70 billion in TV and wanting to get it, they have to place more value on premium content because that context is so important to advertisers. And so in needing that premium content, they start to have to share some of that pie. And so that's what Facebook has done with the launch of Watch. Facebook is now starting to actually pay content creators for content.
Right.
They're doing more to share advertising. It's still early, but also the competition between these platforms is important. And so when YouTube was the only show in town, publishers had no leverage.
Right.
Now with multiple platforms sort of competing for premium content, I think it's a good time to be a premium content creator. And I do believe that there's going to be a huge business, although it will take time.
And you guys have the Dodo, which has a show called The Comeback Kid, which is doing very well, as I hear.
We have 24 shows on Facebook Watch, and we'll have many more.
And what kind of engagement are you seeing?
Well, so Comeback Kids is the #1 show on Facebook Watch so far. We're seeing over 20 million views per episode, over 20 million minutes of viewing per episode. You can hold that up to sort of almost anything in linear TV.
Yeah.
Enormous scale. Granted, all of our shows are not the #1 show on the platform, but collectively, in less than 3 weeks, we've had over 100 million views. We have over 500,000 followers to these shows. So I think of a follower as almost like the linear network TV version of like a TiVo subscriber to a program. We're building fan bases. We're building great engagement, growing engagement. We're really pleased with the early results, but this is going to shake out over an extended period of time.
Jerry, do you think the traditional TV networks, the bigger names, are going to embrace Facebook Watch, or is it a wait and see?
I think it is a little bit of a wait and see. I mean, you talk about Trump's tweet and the idea that Facebook and media companies are colluding. My conversations with media companies, the farthest thing is collusion. I mean, there's some frustration with Facebook in terms of Facebook will ask media companies produce content for our latest initiative, and there's some frustration that they're not getting the kind of financial terms that they'd hoped for. It seems like Facebook in the last year has really made an effort to try to reach out to the journalism community, the media community, to really try and, meet their needs. So I think Facebook's starting to come around, but the idea that they're colluding together is actually kind of funny, considering there's actual real tension there.
Coming up, Twitter is experimenting with one of its biggest product changes yet, expanding the character limits on tweets. We will discuss why this may be key to getting more users. And a reminder, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the Best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. In a bid to expand its sluggish user base, Twitter is testing out a big product change. Has to do with its famous 140-character limit. In a statement, the company explained, "We want every person around the world to easily express themselves on Twitter, so we're doing something new. We're going to try out a longer limit, 280 characters." For reaction, we spoke with Bloomberg Tech reporter Selena Wang and Techonomy CEO David Kirkpatrick.
With a small percentage of users globally, they're going to let them use up to 280 characters. That's twice as much as the current 140 characters that's allowed. Now, this is a big deal. A lot of heavy Twitter users see the 140 character limit as the defining characteristic of the platform. I've been monitoring Twitter very closely. There are already a lot of backlash, a lot of emotional response to this change of people saying that this kind of may have an impact on the brevity, the concise nature of the platform. But at the same time, Twitter faces this problem where they simply are not growing users. And by making it easier to send tweets where you don't have to think about condensing it to exactly 140 characters, they're hoping that more people will come back to the platform day after day.
David, the idea of lengthening tweets has long been bandied about. Another way to look at it, though, is 140 more characters for President Trump.
Yeah, well, I think of Mark Andreessen inventing the tweet storm, because you didn't have enough space to really say something, in some detail. I think it's a good move. There's virtues in concision, and obviously the power users, the, real insiders who think they helped create Twitter are going to be disappointed. But if they want to be a mass service and grow considerably beyond where they are today, they have to keep making it easier to use. And this is a step in that direction.
Right. And Selena, just remind us about user growth and ad revenue. Both are struggling.
Yes, exactly. They're having trouble gaining advertising revenue. Also, the monthly active users were stagnant over the past few quarters, and that's a huge red flag to investors who are hoping that an uptick in MAU would show that there is a long-term sustainable path for this company going forward. You made a good point earlier. This is going to allow Donald Trump to now have twice as much room to give his tweets. Now, Donald Trump has been a good boost to Twitter's usage, but it hasn't been enough to really move that MAU number up even after the election.
I wonder what doubling the number of characters will really do. I mean, is it really that significant a change, David?
Well, I know that there are many times when I find it isn't enough space.
Yes.
So for me, I think it's double that space really would be enough to say something in English. But it's still enough to have a real sentence or two. So I think it's a good move. I really do think it will make it easier.
So what else, though, does Twitter need to do? I mean, is this the silver bullet?
I think so many of us have been flummoxed trying to figure out what Twitter should do. It's the weirdest situation, the best known company, the best known product that can't really seem to become a commercial success in a big way. It's clearly not going to go away. There have been many companies that have been said to be interested in buying it, Disney, Salesforce, among others. And I think that's possible. Something like that could make sense. I would hope it's almost like a global or national treasure, both global and national. We can't let it go away. The president's use is just emblematic of the fact that pretty much every political leader uses it to make their public statements. It's critical in a crisis like a hurricane or a flood. We've got to somehow find a way. Maybe they should start charging us. I don't know.
The people who love Twitter do love Twitter, Selena. What do we know about how long the test will last and when the company might make an actual decision on whether this is permanent?
We don't know all of the details yet. I expect that'll probably last several weeks, and if the initial results go well, they'll probably roll it out to all of the other users. I think an interesting point, though, is when I spoke to the company, they are doing this test based on previous research they had found. Now, an interesting detail about this test is that it is excluding certain languages, including Japanese and Chinese, because those are languages where they found that you can express a lot more in a lot fewer characters. So they had this interesting data point that almost 10% of tweets in English reach that 140 character maximum, while only about 0.4% of tweets in Japanese reach that maximum point. So they're seeing that in certain languages it's much easier to tweet much lengthier conversations, and they're hoping that it'll be the same thing in English too.
Bloomberg's Selena Wang and Techonomy's David Kirkpatrick there. A new warning from China's government to Facebook's WhatsApp messaging service. The Cyberspace Administration of China says the service should act to stop the spread of illegal information and take proactive measures to intercept information regarding terror. This comes after WhatsApp service was interrupted across China earlier this week. Bloomberg's North Asia correspondent Stephen Engel joined us from Hong Kong with more.
Oftentimes when you're reading the different rules and regulations on the Great Firewall of China, it's all about speculation. Oh, is my service blocked? Is it just slow? What's happening? Is it in the crosshairs by regulators? Now we actually got a statement from the Cyberspace Administration in response to questions posed by Bloomberg News, and they came back saying, listen, WhatsApp needs to act to stop the spread of illegal information, quote unquote, in China on the WhatsApp platform and must take proactive measures, basically to do what they are already requiring Tencent's WeChat to do, because that's a domestic company. WhatsApp, obviously run by Facebook. It's the last remaining service by Facebook that is actually available in China. And we've been having intermittent outages, if you will. In July, users reported, including myself, when I was in China in July, I couldn't upload photos or videos, and now on Sunday and Monday, outright outage, including the text messaging part of the service. Then all of a sudden on Tuesday, I guess it was, the service came back on. So this is a clear warning from the authorities that they're watching, and perhaps they've even found a way to get around the end-to-end encryption that Facebook's WhatsApp has employed.
China recently fined Tencent. I mean, could fines be on the way for WhatsApp or Facebook?
Yeah, you have to question what the efficacy of the fines would be, but yes, they could obviously fine them. The Cyberspace Administration has been cracking down on Baidu, on Weibo, on Tencent, because in Guangdong and in Beijing, they've just, in the last week or two, levied heavy fines for various violations, including the alleged spread of propaganda and also terrorism material. So they're really cracking down ahead of the 19th Party Congress, which does start in 3 weeks from now. The big question is, are these temporary measures, which we've had in many years past before these big political powwows, or is this a lasting enforcement that is going to go on for years?
Meantime, are there other messaging services in China that are benefiting from this disruption?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's WeChat, which is the big one, nearly 1 billion users by Tencent, and that is the dominant ecosystem, if you will. But of course, there's Weibo, or several versions of Weibo as well from Sina. Alibaba has a few of these various messaging apps they use for Taobao, for traders to communicate. I know Shanda has Uni, which, and there was Momo as well, which started as a dating app. And there's Telegram as well, which came from the Russians, which, interestingly, a lot of the Bitcoin groups went over to Telegram when WeChat groups were being cracked down, so they could talk about strategies about getting their money to overseas wallets. So there are a few other niche players, but again, WeChat is the dominant one domestically. And
do we expect, Stephen, more disruptions as we get closer to this big Communist Party meeting?
My one-word answer would be yes.
That was Bloomberg's Stephen Engel from Hong Kong. Well, Instagram has rolled out some new changes to combat harassment. The app will now give users the option to limit those who can comment on photos to only people they follow. Instagram is also expanding its offensive comment filter, which launched in June, to 4 more languages: Arabic, French, German, and Portuguese. Coming up, more of my conversation with Ellen Pao, what she has to say about her time as interim CEO of Reddit. That is next. Plus, GoPro is betting its new Hero 6 camera will be a hit. We'll hear from CEO Nick Woodman. This is Bloomberg. Toshiba has signed a final agreement to sell its flash memory chip business to a group led by Bain Capital. The price tag, $18 billion. Among the firms in the consortium, Apple, Dell, and SK Hynix. Now back to my conversation with Ellen Pao, author of Reset and Kapoor Capital Partner. After she lost her historic gender discrimination case against Kleiner Perkins, she became interim CEO of Reddit, where she made bold but controversial moves to crack down on hate on the site. But 8 months in, she was effectively forced to resign. I asked her what happened. Here's what she had to say.
think we had a lot of change that had to happen. So Ishan came in a couple years before I did and really tried to transform the company. It was, a small startup with just mostly white men, started by 2 white men, and that culture was very strong of exclusion. And as Ishan came in, he brought in different people. All the women kept getting pushed out. I ended up joining and in I think 2013 and worked with Ishan to push a lot of change together. This was a group that didn't want mobile, right? So it was very conservative, very locked into the product as it was, and we were trying to bring it in to reach more people, to have more conversations. And I think, I think the change was really hard on the community. It was really hard on the employees, and it just took, it took a lot of effort to get to where we got at the end of that.
You made an effort to cut down on hate. You banned several of the most hateful subreddits, and there's some evidence to show that it actually worked. There's a study that came out that showed that they have significantly cut down on hate. Do you think that online harassment would be such a problem if more women had been involved in designing these systems in the first place?
I think if more women of color, and especially underrepresented women of color, were involved at higher levels, it would be completely different, because it's the people who get harassed the most who really understand how the systems work and really see all the ways it gets distorted into ultimately presenting a certain view and having that dominate the conversation. And if you can't come at it from that kind of minority, small group perspective, it's really hard to see everything that's going on.
So how would it be different? How would Twitter be different? How would Reddit be different?
Oh, I think people would have invested more in tools, would have invested more in community management, would have had different rules, would have taken down more of the content faster and banned more of the people in a more consistent way. But it's hard when you don't put enough resources, because those problems scale with the user base. And if you're not putting in the frameworks and if you're not putting in the tools, it gets out of hand very quickly.
How much hope do you have for Twitter? I mean, can Twitter at this point, 10 years in, get its harassment problem under control?
I don't know. I know they're trying, and they have made some incremental improvements, but I really do believe that it's going to take a lot of work to get rid of all of the harassment and make sure that everybody feels comfortable participating in the platform. I think they should ban Donald Trump. I think that's a huge problem, that he has this behavior that's very counter to the terms of service, and yet he continues to be given this huge platform to dominate and to encourage more of the same bad behavior.
So you think Twitter should ban Donald Trump?
I'm one of many people who believes that. It's not just me, and I think with good reason.
What's the reason?
He is harassing of people. He threatens people on the platform, and then he uses his influence to get people to harass other people on the platform.
What about the people who would come back and say free speech?
It's such a red herring. I think there are many reasons why people say free speech. I mean, it's an easy thing. Then you can say whatever you want on the platform. And we saw on Reddit, when you allow free speech, it's the people who are dominant on the platform who can bully everybody else off. And there's also an issue of, everybody limits some speech on the platform. You ban spam, you ban certain types of harassment. So people are not having complete free speech on the platform already. This is just driving the rules to protect people from getting harassed off the platform, so you can have as many voices as possible. I think the purpose of free speech is to allow everybody to be able to have a voice, to have these conversations. And if one group is pushing everybody else off, you can have this free speech platform, but there are not many voices or opinions being represented.
So Senator Hannah Beth Jackson is planning to introduce a bill that would explicitly prohibit harassment in the venture capital industry. What's your take on the bill, or how optimistic are you that legislation could solve this problem? I'm
hopeful, right? I think everything else hasn't solved it so far. I think the shaming has started to help a little bit, like people coming out and saying this is not acceptable. You can't go on an airplane and experience what I experienced, which is people talking about porn stars, talking about sex acts, talking about prostitutes, right? That's not acceptable anymore, and now you know that, so you should change your behavior. But I'm hearing it's not changing quite yet, so we need something else to help, and everything I think will help, but I don't think that's going to be the one thing that prevents it, because these people do think that they're above the law. They don't think the law applies to them, so you need to keep pushing that public perception and pushing, and telling the stories. I think the most impactful thing is all of these women telling their stories.
On that last note, you mentioned the porn-obsessed CEO. We saw that also in the excerpt of your book. You don't mention his name. His name did come up in the trial. Why did you leave his name out? And what else did you leave out? I'm sure there's a lot that you didn't put in there for various reasons.
I wanted the book to be as fair as possible. So with the CEO, I don't know him that well. Maybe he had an off day. Maybe he was goaded into doing something by Ted. I just don't know. So I didn't want to have this one incident kind of this one experience for 5 hours be the way that I portrayed him to the whole public. I think I tried to be fair. I tried to keep people's families out of it. I tried to, I had a friend, and our view was like no collateral damage. So these, you have the people who are the protagonists and who are the main people that I interacted with and who held me back and who are holding a lot of other people back. And they were the people I wanted the story to focus on.
Coming up, GoPro stock got a big boost last month on anticipation for the Hero 6. Now we get a first look at the device and hear from CEO Nick Woodman next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on Sirius XM. This is Bloomberg. GoPro is calling the new Hero 6 camera the most powerful and convenient ever released by the company. And they're betting big on the device. Anticipation for the Hero 6 helped boost third quarter guidance and could be the key to the camera maker's turnaround. Bloomberg's Selena Wang spoke with GoPro CEO Nick Woodman.
GoPro has to keep innovating and coming out with new and exciting products that excite consumers. And I think we did that today with Hero 6 Black and Fusion. Hero 6 Black is far and away the most exciting and capable and easy to use GoPro that we've ever made. And then Fusion pushes GoPro into a totally new market with 360 spherical cameras. We think this is going to play an important role in the future of how people capture and share themselves, and Fusion is our first new product. And then we also made important advancements with Karma. It now has follow me functions and a cool new lookup feature that allows Karma to film what's above it, which is unique in drones. So I think that we're showing that GoPro is continuing to innovate and continuing to excite consumers.
So Karma and the spherical Fusion camera are new additions to the product line. How else are we going to see it evolve beyond the traditional action cameras?
Well, a big part of GoPro's future is we now see a GoPro as an untethered lens for your phone. What we mean by that is a GoPro now automatically copies any new photos and videos you capture over to your phone, and the GoPro app then creates a video for you. So when you use a GoPro, it's like using a separate untethered lens that offloads all its footage to your phone. So really a GoPro is the ultimate capture complement to a phone, and that as we think of ourselves in that way and we think about new types of GoPros, new types of untethered lenses, we think we can dramatically expand our market.
Action cameras are maturing, smartphones are getting even better and more durable and waterproof. So what's your pitch to those consumers who say, I don't need another camera, my smartphone's good enough?
Well, I think that a phone is a phenomenal camera. It's often in your pocket, and it's right there reactively when you want to film somebody or something else happening. But there's a lot of activities where you don't want to pull out your phone. You want to be more in the moment. And you also don't want to film somebody else. You want to film yourself. And so GoPro, with its untethered lens strategy, we think that we can make lenses that complement somebody's use of a phone, but not require them to pull the phone out or not even have the phone on them.
Now, the Hero 6 is using a custom designed processor. This is the first time. So why decide to go this route, and what types of challenges are associated with making this yourself?
Oh, well, designing and developing a processor with a partner as we did, there's always risks involved, but there's also a risk that when you're reliant on others' innovation and ingenuity that they put into their own work, into their own processors. And we found that what we wanted to do with Hero 6 Black, we couldn't do with any other processor that was on the market. So we had to develop our own. It allowed us to hit cost targets for the product. If we had even been able to do this with somebody else, Hero 6 Black would have had to be more expensive to the end consumer, so that's not good. So we were able to deliver Hero 6 at a lower price point, and we were able to hit performance levels that would have otherwise been impossible.
So last year was a challenge.
We're taking our destiny into our own hands from a technology standpoint.
And on that point, last year was pretty challenging from a technical standpoint. There were some product delays. So what have you learned from those experiences to make sure that the rollout of this year's products are seamless?
We're doing fewer things better. In previous years, we had other businesses we were running, like our media business. We had many programs going on in products that consumers never saw that were more targeted towards professionals. We cut all of that and focused GoPro on what it does best, and what our whole vision and mission is to help people capture and share their lives so that they can celebrate the moment in a way that they just can't with any other camera.
Being a hardware company is very difficult in the public markets. GoPro shares have fallen quite dramatically since the IPO. So what are investors missing?
I think investors are missing that we're growing again. The previous comp of 2016, people think that unit sales are way down, volumes were higher in previous years, but what they need to look at is that volumes of our premium products, $299 and above, are growing. We're selling more of the products that matter and of the products that have better margin for GoPro and make us more profit. So GoPro is healthy and it's growing, and I think investors are starting to take notice.
And let's quickly talk about drones. Many analysts say that the market leader DJI has superior features and a similar price point. So given those market effects, how much of a revenue driver do you see drones becoming for GoPro?
We're really excited about drones. Karma is doing well. It's a phenomenal accessory for the GoPro community. It's very versatile with the detachable gimbal and how it connects to the Karma grip. And our customers have spoken. They really like that flexibility, that versatility, and Karma continues to get better. You know, today we announced Follow Me features, as well as a lookup feature that allows Karma to film what's above it, which, as I mentioned, is unique to drones. And we're going to continue to innovate and advance our drone offering into what comes after Karma.
That was GoPro CEO Nick Woodman. And that does it for this edition of the Best of Bloomberg Technology. We will bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Tune in each day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. And remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.